I stated in a response to Rebecca video, my mom kicked me out 4 days after I graduated from high school. I've always been a good kid, but after graduating, I had a conversation with my twin brother about how he used to sneak out the house and how he would steal the car because my mom was a lot more strict on me and my brother compared to my sisters because of the type of brothers she had growing up. I think there was a time where the city used to rank #1 in the United States for crime and disease growing up. I asked him where was I when you would do this, and he said you would be asleep. Within those 3 days after graduation, the combination of having a mom that I felt disconnected from because she was always at work, a father whose effort was extraordinary, but he was always at work because of child support, along with the strict rule of my mom that seemed extreme compared to the guys we grew up with, that conversation I had with my brother began to influence me. Guess what I did? You guessed right. I stole the car. Compared to the child that I had always been, this action by me was really extreme. Me and my brother were just alike, but when it came to our parents, we operated on opposite ends of the spectrum when it came to confidence. I used to wish God would have warned me about the path that I was getting ready to take that was going to put me on that same end of the spectrum that my brother was on when it came to our parents. To me, the me right now truly understands the severity of my actions, but the me then was operating out of emotions and ego. So I want to thank God, my mom, my dad, and everyone that has contributed to my growth, even those that didn't or don't know that they contributed to me. It could be you listening to this video. Thank you so much for being a part of my life. She tells me to get out, and I didn't know how serious she was, but I left anyway. Keep in mind, I had only been 18 for 3 months. This starts my beginning of me becoming a runner. That night, I slept outside for the first time, and it was one of the scariest days of my life. While this went on for a few days, I still was working at a restaurant called Arby's. I lived with one of my coworkers for a few weeks. Then I lived with another friend that I played high school football with for a few weeks. Then I asked my grandmother, who was my dad's mom, if I could stay in an extra room she had. I told her that I would pay her to live there, and she also had a car that she no longer used. I asked her if I fixed it up and pay her for it, could I have it so I could commute back and forth to school. This was one of my ultimate goals. She said yes. A few weeks go by, and I'm paying to live there. I'm paying her for the car, and I'm paying for parts the car needs so me and my grandfather can work on the car. I learned a lot about cars in this period of my life. Then one day, I worked a double shift, and my grandpa came and got me from work. I'm in my room almost asleep, and my grandpa comes in the room to wake me up and tell me I have to find somewhere else to live. An entire month has not gone by. If I was in a verbal contract, I wasn't given a warning so I could have time to vacate, and I wasn't refunded any money that I had gave. I packed all my things in my bags, and this action became a very popular trend of mine that kept happening for the next 2 years. Right before I graduated high school, I developed a friendship with a girl who was a freshman. I don't know how it happened, it just did. When I was packing all my things, I don't know why, but I called her and told her what I was doing. She told me to bring all my things to her sister's house. Her and her family had moved here from New Jersey, and her sister had a place across the street from her mom. I've actually met her sister before, so I knew where to go. For some odd reason, her sister's house was a destination on my senior prom night. Maybe the reason I went to prom alone is what played a part in that destination. Her sister actually had a husband, and they took me in like I was family. Me and her uncle bonded and got pretty close over playing the Xbox I had and just talking about everything that would come up. He smoked and drank alcohol, and the only habit I picked up was the drinking. He also was an aspiring rapper. So one of so one of the rooms in the house was used as a studio. He was pretty dope. I actually loved his music. Most of the time I was there alone starting around 1 p.m., maybe because they both worked during the week at a plant. So I spent most of the time, if I wasn't at work, contemplating about school and how I was going to get to it. So my objective became getting a car. Even though my grandparents kicked me out, I used to walk to their house from where I was living to visit. While walking, I would walk past two different car dealerships. One day, I started to talk to the owners about leasing a car. I think Tone, which is her sister's husband, studio habits were starting to rub off on me because one day I sat down with paper and pencil and I began to write about how I was feeling. From being a blessing to stressing, I cry myself to sleep guessing. Hands filled with tears while my head is resting. Wiping my hands as I look toward heaven, screaming out to God, I've learned my lesson. I can't sit still. How would you feel? Can someone please tell me what's fake and what's real? It felt so near, the voice in my ear. To live life, you pay a price. Did you hear? And was it clear? It sounds about right, paying a price. But in my story, I know I did. I've done it twice. By the end of the day, when it's all said and planned, in 2006, the controller was put in my hands to become a man. Life is like a game, and I'm ready to win. June 10th, I pressed start, and my life began. My thoughts came out into a poem. I didn't understand manifestation then the way I do now, but with the writing and talking to the car dealerships, I manifested a car. By this time, me and my friend are in a relationship or a situationship. This causes problems between her and her mom because I'm no longer in high school and her daughter is a sophomore in high school. At this point, we are having sex and I'm right across the street. Maybe a 20-second sprint, so I was easy access for her. This terrified her mom, and now I truly understand why. One day while I'm home alone, there was a knock at the door. I answered the door and it was my girl. I think she either skipped or just didn't have school. Whatever the reason was, she was home alone. She wanted me to come across the street to her mom's house. I refused immediately, but somehow she convinced me. So I went over, and of course, we began having sex in her room. I should have stuck to my immediate response. I can't remember if it was during the act or if we were just laying there naked, but her mom walks in on one of the two scenes. To sum it up, I was driving a wedge in between this girl and her mom, and subconsciously, I didn't want to do that anymore. I think her mom put her on punishment in child in child's I think her mom put her on punishment and birth control, and she couldn't come across the street for however long. The car I manifested was my dad's car, but in this period of my life, I didn't recognize this. One day, he shows up at where I'm living, wanting to help me get enrolled in school for the spring semester because I missed the fall. Spirit was always making a way for me, but I was so detached from myself and God that I was not aware of anything spiritual. Everything was happening so fast, all I could focus on was what was happening in my present and where I thought I should be and where I would have been if it wasn't for my mom. I found out years later that it was my stepdad that wanted me out. I'll address this news later. I got enrolled into the spring semester, but was not able to live on campus because the student population had grew tremendously overnight because of the addition of a new football program. They had to start building more dorm rooms. So my dad offered to take me every day, but I saw what it was doing to him. I was still working at Arby's and I had a coworker who went to the same school. She offered to let me ride back home with her, but somehow I kept getting stranded. As I stated earlier, when my mom kicked me out, I became a runner, not a talker. My actions did that. My girl lied to me about something small, but at the time, according to my perspective, it was massive. Somehow, I got back in contact with the girl that I was in a relationship with when my mom first kicked me out. She never knew because I didn't tell her. I just broke up with her because of what I was going through. I did it when I was living with the high school football teammate. I actually had him call her and tell her because I couldn't do it. She actually started stealing her mom's car to come get me from school. With the combination of being stranded, not being able to focus on class, not having my own transportation, a wedge forming in my relationship, and just being overall uncomfortable, I quit school. I felt the timing was wrong. Everything was happening so fast, and I felt I was losing control again. I felt me and my girlfriend were on two different wavelengths at that time, and it was creating friction, and I needed to find my way because of what I was going through. I loved her, there was passion there, but it was a situationship. So I did what I thought was best for the both of us, and I lied to her and told her I didn't want to be with her anymore. Me and the friend that was steal her mom's car started getting pretty close, but as I was getting to know her, I started to realize she was crazy and extremely insecure. I wasn't used to this type of female. It pushed me away, and on the day I decided to not deal with her anymore, she told me she was pregnant, and this encourages me to pursue the Air Force. I went to MEPS, or the Military Entrance Processing Station, and I swore in.